Minutes with us. David, appreciate some time. With almost a week kind of in the rearview mirror now from the draft, half a week, whatever it's been, when you look back at what the Cowboys did, what grade do you give Dallas for the 2022 draft?
I mean, not to sound like a cop-out, but I'm just not really a grade guy. I've done this long enough that I've seen too many picks that I thought were stupid turn into great players, and I've seen too many picks that looked like slam dunks turn into superstar. I mean, really, anybody that says otherwise is lying to you. So what I guess kind of my snapshot of this draft is I think the Cowboys went into it with some very obvious needs on their team. They needed to come out of this draft with help on the offensive line as well as the receiver core. And then adding a pass rusher was a big priority as well. Now, the Cowboys will tell you that they drafted true to their board and took the best guy available in all those spots. I'm not 100% sure I buy that. I think they were very much targeting these areas of need. And, they're on the team now, and we'll see how well they play. I'm intrigued by the overall body of work. But like I said, I mean, you try to talk too definitively about the draft a week afterwards, it's a great way to wind up looking stupid a year or two from now.
So there was so much talk about kind of the big three offensive tackles out of NC State, Ike Ekwonu, and then Charles Cross out of Mississippi State and Evan Neal out of Alabama. But there were a lot of tackles that were taken in this draft. Tyler Smith out of Tulsa, that's probably not as much of a household name. How good of a player do they think Tyler Smith can be?
So, yeah, and going back to the idea of tilting toward need, right? And I think you're going to come across a lot of people that think the Cowboys reached on this pick, and we'll see. You're absolutely right. There was an elite tackle class at the top of this draft. The Cowboys picking at 24 were out of the range for your Ekwanus and your Evan Neals and your Charles Crosses. I mean, I just don't think that was ever realistic. So I think they did the next best thing, which is to say Tyler Smith is not as ready-made as those guys. Certainly not at tackle. He honestly, for the time being, I expect he's going to spend a lot of his time at guard. The Cowboys need a left guard. I think they think that he fits that bill. But I think what they saw was this is a guy who just turned 21 years old. He's 6'5", 325 pounds. He's got all the promise in the world. He's just incredibly raw. And it's going to be on them to develop him. And it's interesting. He's definitely got the talent. Since the pick was made, you kind of get word asking around. I mean, some big-time college programs were sniffing around him, trying to, see if he would be willing to transfer to a bigger program from Tulsa. He ultimately wound up going pro, and it didn't matter. But he's got the talent. I mean, I think he certainly has the talent that he could have spent his senior season in the SEC if he had wanted to. So now it's on the Cowboys to develop this very young, very talented, very raw player. And, I mean, if he's as good as they think he is, he could start at guard with an eye on being a starting left tackle in the near future. Or maybe they don't do as good of a job developing him as we think, and it looks like a bad pick in a year or two. And that's kind of the fun of the draft.
David Helman from DallasCowboys.com on your radio, joining us on the Farm Bureau phone line. Sam Williams is fascinating to me because I watched him closely for the last couple of years. So the knocks on Sam coming into this last season were that, his motor didn't run hot all the time. He took plays off. And then there was just kind of some stuff in his background, stuff that made you kind of raise your eyebrows. And he was able to kind of avoid getting in trouble on multiple occasions, and comes from a really tough background in terms of growing up. That said, he had a first-round season. He didn't have a first-round career, but he had a first-round season. Is there a scenario where we look up a couple of years from now, and I guess I'm still kind of asking you to project, which you don't really want to do, where we look up and go, man, what a value that was mid-late, or I guess early second round, mid-second round?
His talent's not going to be the reason why he doesn't work out from everything I know about the guy. Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I think the full body of work is something you question. I mean, just talking about his entire college career. And then, I think teams had to do a lot of homework on character. You know, this is a guy that spent time suspended by the Ole Miss program. I'm not here to judge the guy, but I do think you have to do homework on that type of stuff when you're talking about a guy with those kind of issues in his background. But the tape speaks for itself, and that's playing in the SEC makes it easy on you. I mean, you play in the SEC West. I just mentioned Evan Neal and Charles Cross, talking about two guys that were drafted in the top 10. Sam Williams went against both of them and had plenty of success. Like, he can go against those types of tackles. I think his tape rushing the edge is just as good as any of the guys that went up the top of at this draft. Maybe not consistently, but the flashes of that type of ability are definitely there. And yeah, I mean, again, that's what the Cowboys are banking on. Like, if they're right about everything, that they're not going to have to worry about him away from football and that he can tap into that potential, this could absolutely look like a steal. And the Cowboys have shown year after year they're not afraid of taking these kind of risks. Sometimes it's a guy with questions about his background. Randy Gregory is an example of that, a guy who was facing multiple issues, faced a suspension, failed a drug test at the combine, and sometimes it's injury, right? Jalen Smith was a guy who they drafted in the second round despite not a lot of people being confident he would ever play at a high level again. It's worked out for him sometimes, and it hasn't worked out for him sometimes. And, again, I mean, we'll see where it goes with Sam, but the guy absolutely has the talent to deliver on that for sure.
You know, there's another guy that Dallas took that I feel like his tape kind of speaks for itself, and that's Damon Clark out of LSU. They get him with the 33rd pick of the 5th round. If you watched him play last year for LSU, and I know you did, he at times looks special. And I really felt like I kind of got snubbed in some of the postseason awards last year. This feels like a nice pickup in the 5th round for Dallas. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, not at all. I mean, it's easy for me to say this. I'm for any listener that doesn't know, I am just a blatant LSU homer. But the thing about Damon Clark is he had a spinal fusion surgery in March. He had a herniated disc in his spine. He needed to have surgery on it. He's likely going to miss most of, if not all of, his rookie season. The Cowboys aren't ruling him out, but he's certainly not going to be available for training camp. He's certainly not going to be on the active roster week 1. But this is a guy with the talent of a top 100 pick. I mean, if he's got a clean bill of health, he's going in the first 3 rounds. There's no doubt about it. I absolutely agree with you. I think he was one of the handful of best linebackers in football. His numbers stack up very, very comparably to Nakobe Dean, who was seen as the best linebacker in this class by a lot of people prior to the draft. And you get him in the 5th round, which I mentioned Jalen Smith. There's a lot of risk that goes into drafting a guy in the top 40, not knowing how healthy he's going to be. In the 5th round, you don't even know how long those guys are going to be on your roster. So if it doesn't work out, it's really no big loss. And if it does work out, I think they just drafted one of the 3 or 4 best linebackers in this class. So from a pure value standpoint, I think it's a no-brainer. I heard that the Cowboys were investigating him as early as day 2. I thought that was a little too soon. I even thought the 4th round was a little too soon. But once you get into the 5th round, you're just throwing darts at guys. And like I said, I mean, if this works out from a health standpoint, I think they're going to be pretty happy about it.
Certainly worth a flyer pick there. Only got a minute left. I asked Luke Johnson, who covers the Saints, yesterday this question. I'll ask you again. Between now and the time the season begins, what's the biggest need that the Cowboys need to figure out a way to address?
Honestly, it's funny because I would say still offensive line, just because Tyler Smith is a little raw. You don't have a proven swing tackle on this team, but ownership has already come out and said that they don't plan on doing that, which honestly for me is a little bit surprising. So the one thing I could say is this is a team that could probably use linebacker depth. Again, Damon Clark's not going to be ready for training camp. You're kind of thin there from a numbers standpoint, but honestly, if they're not going to add on the offensive line, I get the feeling the Cowboys might feel good about where they are until after training camp at the very least.
All right. It's certainly going to be